turn our focus to the retail sector. Mr. Charitha Subasinghe, President of Retail at John Keells Holdings, PLC, will take us through how modern trade practices are revolutionizing Sri Lanka's retail industry. He'll share examples from Sri Lanka's largest retailer to demonstrate how process excellence is driven productivity in the sector. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Charitha Subasinghe as he joins us on the stage.
I think I'm walking in at the right time with Jan talking about productivity, especially in the service industry. And I will take you through a few elements of how we have incorporated the productive methods in our ways of working in retail. I also believe that over the last 1.5 days, we would have heard about sustainability. How does a business become sustainable? You talked about the different productivity processes that could be adapted, as well as growth. So I don't intend to go into details on the theoretical part of it. But firstly, I would also think for any business to be sustainable, it has to be relevant for all the main stakeholders the business works with, as well as it also needs to provide the right incentives and the right returns for the effort, as well as the assets utilization part of it. Unless there is that right return, it is not a sustainable business. I mean, you would hear sometimes some of our industries say, I can't afford to pay the right wage for a particular worker, but I don't think it's the right thing, because it's not a very sustainable business if you could not pay the right amount or the return for the different stakeholders. Secondly, I also believe that for you to have the right returns for the different stakeholders, productivity plays a significant role. Effectively, utilizing the assets, maximizing the utilization of assets becomes important. If you have that sustainable business as well as the productivity in place, it sets up the right platform for growth to happen. So during the next few minutes, I'll take you through what we had done in modern trade, the supermarket business, in the distribution of food, as well as what we have also incorporated specifically in Keells. If you take the food distribution in Sri Lanka, modern trade is still relatively a small part of it. If you look at it, modern trade is not more than 15% of the food distribution, while still the majority is the general trade, the unorganized trade that we call it. There are over 300,000 shops of different forms of shape that provides the distribution of food. If you take this into consideration, the traditional food distribution methodology, how we adapt, it is a lot more, the maze is quite more than what I've shown here, but you could see, looking at it, how unproductive the method is. If you take dry goods, you have the manufacturer, he has distributors, then dealers, who covers 300,000 shops of different forms of shape. So it works through the manufacturer, distributor, dealer, and the transportation goes through 300,000 shops. If you take the fresh produce, the farmer, as John said, one area that we cannot have too much mechanization happening at the farm gate is simply because the lots that a farmer works are relatively small. And he also doesn't have the capability of reaching directly to the final market. So you have the collectors who goes around, collects from the farmers, then he will go to the regional market or sometimes the economic center close by. There is again a consolidation that happens. Then it will come possibly to Colombo, the vegetable center, the central operation. From there, again, there will be the different other distributors who will come and pick up the vegetables and take them back into different regional food vegetable counters. So you could see the entire gamut of activities that comes in for that vegetable distribution to happen. Fish is another further complication. You have the trawlers that brings the fish, then it comes to the beach, then it goes to the, then another vendor would buy it, then he'll go to a close by regional market. Then from the regional market, you'll find the fishmongers taking the vegetables to, the fish to the households. So you could see what a maze of distribution that does happen when it comes to from the manufacturing part of it. Then you go to the buying part of it. In this 300,000 shops that you talk about, you have the specialized dry goods shops. Then you have the vegetable markets, the fishmongers, the meat counters, to all that. And you see the customer having to go to different locations to buy what he or she needs for his weekly needs. So when you take all that into consideration, the question is it a sustainable model which provides the necessary incentives to all the stakeholders? This is where I believe we are at. If you take the fresh produce, it is said that post-harvest wastage is estimated at about 40%. So there is a certain wastage that happens with the traditional ways of working. Then, of course, the freshness, when you get to the final destination, there's a certain drop in the wastage, the freshness as well. If you look at the dry supply chain, you see the transportation cost of all that happening. Inventory and working capital management. Now, you know that if you have different elements of in a chain, each of these particular places would have to have a certain buffer of inventory. So you're possibly produced, and the inventory is stuck or kept as a buffer in each of these loops in that chain. There is also a case of sub-optimizing of assets. When I say sub-optimization, is that you will possibly not have a full lorry load available every time for you to take from point A to point B, because you are just replenishing a single order, a few orders, but not optimizing on the asset of a vehicle. If you look at it from an employee, actually it should be employee point of view, there's a lack of growth. You'll be doing the same role continuously, and the income generation for that individual will also be somewhat limited. Customer, the time you take to do your buying, having to visit so many places, the cost of running around, as well as certain consumer rights also in terms of freshness, to all that also comes into play. Then from a government angle, we say one of our largest effects, outflows, happens to be on fuel, and we as much as $4.5 billion US for an annum. And out of that, roughly about 30 to 40% of that is on transportation. Then also the inefficiencies in tax collection. 300,000 shops I can't think of us having a very efficient tax collection method, and you would possibly have certain leakages in that process. So take into consideration all that. Let me move into our operation. At Keells, we have roughly about 2 million unique customers who shop with us regularly. We have a team strength of about 6,000 across 135 outlets. We work with about 650 suppliers and about 2,000 farmers. Because of this, our purpose that we established for our business was to improve the quality of life of the nation. Now, it's one hell of a lofty goal, but why we considered it as a purpose, to have such a purpose, was simply because we could possibly influence a certain segment of the population. And if we did positively impact these segments, obviously we'll be able to improve the quality of life of the nation. That was the intention of the purpose. How we drive the purpose is through our brand house. It is not a document that we have on a wall, but how we live it. And if you look at this, how we drive the business to bring that purpose to life. And in that context, we cover all the main segments of with whom we work with. And in that context, when you talk about product, we talk about freshness and innovation. Price, we will not be, we'll be in par with the market. Place is always going to be a place where it is interesting, innovative, for somebody to come and do their mundane job of shopping for their grocery. People, our intention is to grow the people. And in that context, how do you grow? And the customer, getting it right for the customer and the community. So this is how we have established our business. And you'll find that most of the businesses during this period have done well if the North Star is a purpose. So that is how we have been driving our business. These are the main stakeholders in our business. You have the customer, the farmer, government, community, and employees. And we believe that if we get it right for these stakeholders, the shareholder returns will also improve. Logistic framework. Now, if you could remember, my first slide talked about how complex or confusing that logistics part was. But here what we have done is that we have built a purpose-built distribution center in Keroalapitia, just north of Colombo, 250,000 square foot building, warehouse. And we have built it in line with the best in the world. We have just replicated what a Tesco would do in their logistics operation. And we have also invested in the technology and the infrastructure to drive efficiencies. And how it happens is that the order goes to the supplier, and that also includes, and it is data-driven, AI is included in terms of forecasting, working with the supplier on that aspect, and then one delivery comes into the warehouse, and thereafter the STO or the stock order comes from the outlet where the replenishment of the stock order is done, and one delivery goes to the outlets, which takes all the 650 suppliers' stocks with one delivery. We do a daily delivery for some outlets, and the rest we do thrice a week. Now, the benefit of this is that the inventory. Before we went into centralization, our stock holding period was 40 days. But with the centralization and efficiencies that we are running with the warehousing, our stock holding days are reduced to 25 days. And just imagine 15-day reduction in the stock holding can be achieved. in Sri Lanka. And then at the other end, you have the shopper coming in, one location, he or she gets the total baskets and moves out. And that is a further productivity improvement there. When it comes to the fresh produce, the vegetables, we have 9 collection centers across the island. We work directly with the farmer at the farm gate. Each of the farmers have with them a forecast, what we intend to buy from them. The collection centers also has with them what that individual farmer could give you during that period. So based on that, you have the order with the farmer, what we are going to buy. We have provided them with crates. So the farmer at the farm gate harvests the vegetables and puts that into a crate. Crate comes to the collection center, and thereafter, from there, we ship out the vegetables in crate form, in chilled operations, into Kerawalapitia, and from there, by morning, the vegetables go to the respective outlets. What it has meant is simplification of the fresh produce delivery. Now, in this part 2, I would like to also talk to you about, now, if you take food distribution, you don't need to be a supermarket operator nor a final retailer to incorporate any of these. Now, even this part that I talked about, collection center into delivery into the final market, is a profitable business. There have been various people that I've been talking to whom I have offered to show them how it is done. And that element can be replicated because it's profitable. You don't need to be running the final outlet to make money. If any organization sets up a collection center, collects directly from the farmer, has an operation which brings directly to the final outlet, still that element can make money and it will be productive. In this context, so I talked initially about the logistic part of it. Now I talk about the store. Store, finally, the delivery is going to be running the store efficiently, having the right stocking levels at the right time, having the right number of people at the right time to service the customer is what is expected. Now, in this context, what we have done is that we have simplified the processes inside the supermarket, where you don't need to think. You just need to follow a process. And that checklist has the process, what you need to do. It has been simplified so that a person, a boy or girl, within a very short period can learn the process, and that is what he has to deliver. And in that context, it is also system-driven, the checklist. That individual needs to be just following that checklist and getting the stocking right, stock levels right. And the auditing processes, our biggest challenge in running a supermarket is that how do you ensure consistency across all the supermarkets every minute that you're operating? And for that, consistency has to be there. And how do you follow consistency is simply ensuring simplification, process, just following the process and ensuring and having the audits done to ensure that it is done the way that you want. Then in terms of delivery also, if you look at it, it is paperless. Stocks come from the warehouse in the system. With a handheld device, you check what you have received, then you click it and it hits the outlet's stocks. In terms of stock replenishment, now here was a case where we used AI and we have sort of got it right, where we need to replenish the stocks according to the sale. In that, so AI, the machine learning tells that outlet, what are you going to run out of for the next 2 hours sale? A replenishment sheet comes out, and that individual goes back and replenish those particular bays with the right number, right quantity, so that you got the stocking right on the shelf. And we monitor it through the lost sale. We monitor it also based on monitoring the process, that how long it takes to refill the front is also monitored. The next element is the rostering. Again, it is based on AI. Then based on it, how many cashier points need to be open based on the number of customers that we'll be servicing during a particular time, based on the scan rate at the cashier point, and that gives you how many cashier points should be open, how many people should be rostered during that period. So that gives that efficiency. So this is at the store. As I mentioned before, we have an advanced analytical roadmap established in our ways of working. How we have incorporated in our DNA is that when a business problem comes up, we look at it from an analytical angle to understand what data will tell us, what solutions could come from data. And with that comes the practical solutions that are brought in. And it has worked well. And if I looked at, in terms of getting the right mix of products into which store, on the right-hand side, you will see some of the solutions that we have brought in. In terms of the supply chain part of it, the forecasting part of it, how much stocking should be done, in which store, to which item. In that context, the pricing and the promotions, the marketing, and finally the operations. So we see AI does play a role. And I think that's something that we as businesses must embrace in that context. So what all this have done in our business is, in terms of, as I mentioned before, the different stakeholders around. If you look at the customers, we have a 2 million customer base who have been loyal, who have been giving us almost a 15% year-on-year growth in our business, even during a difficult period. And we have also been able to drive in line with their requirements in terms of affordability and all that, and running the stores in as much as efficient as possible. If you look at employees, we have set up a retail academy, and our recruitment is right from the school leavers, 18 years. It's a vocational training operation, and it's a case where they come in, learn their trade, and deliver. And what it had meant is that the last part of it, in terms of, I did mention to you, it has to make economic sense for an employee to work with us. And when, unfortunately, when the minimum wage in the country is still at 21,000, we are able to give them a 36,000 entry-level salary, almost 70% more than the minimum wage. And that is coming from productivity, simply because we have been able to work with less, and because of that, been able to pay more than that. So in addition to that, we also provide accommodation and food and transportation, which, if you put a value to that, about 18,000. So there is a benefit for the employee to come and work. Then in terms of the government, one of the main areas in this tax collection, and the fact that retail is a business where the turnover is significantly high while the margins are low. So any tax on a turnover basis, the government does earn quite a bit. And in that context, for the last financial year, we have been able to pay VAT of about 2.7 billion, as well as SSL about 1.4. So there is a return for the government in terms of benefit to the tax revenue. And also the fact is that in terms of the tax net, 300,000 shops, you'll never be able to see who's paying and who's not. But consolidation amongst the modern trade will also give that ability for the revenue collection to happen. In addition to that, of course, the other aspects of employment generation to all the other non-financial benefits also has accrued. For the farmer side, we have also been able to invest directly on their technology, greenhouse. Why greenhouse and drip irrigation is simply because one of the biggest challenges going forward, unfortunately for our farm community, is the change in weather patterns. And because of that, if you get the rain at the wrong time or no rain at all at the necessary time, your entire crop, your entire livelihood is destroyed. So what we looked at was that how do we work with them to see how you can start controlling those uncertainties. So greenhouse does give one element. Then in terms of drip irrigation, also in another aspect of it. Then good agriculture practices where you don't overly invest in fertilizer or pesticide, but get in the right quantity. And all that also had been a benefit that we have been able to provide the farmer. And on top of that, as I mentioned, post-harvest wastage, if it is 40%, our total end-to-end wastage has dropped to 5 to 8%. So that's another benefit in that entire logistic operation of reducing the wastage post-harvest elevation. Then finally, the other stakeholder is the greater community, and in that context too, we are one big pledge that we have established is to reduce the polythene usage, and brought in different ways of reducing it. Then preschool meals we provide. Then also in terms of food redistribution. Something interesting there is that at the end of the day, you do have a certain amount of stocks of fresh vegetables available. Now, it is edible. There's nothing wrong with that vegetable. But it is not eye candy. So you end up having to throw it. But what we have done is that we have a food redistribution happening where we have linked up each of the stores with the community around, especially of let's say the children's homes, the elderly homes, where they need some financial support, and we redistribute that vegetables, which are still in an edible form. Nothing wrong with it; it's not spoiled. But every month we redistribute about 220,000 kilos of vegetables in that process. Renewable energy is also another thing. 107 outlets have solar power, generating 12,500 kilowatts of, we have renewable capacity established, and that is how we have been working. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to take you through sustainable. For a business to be sustainable, you have to get it right for the different stakeholders, and that was what I showed over the last few slides. And how to get it is through driving productivity and the process improvements in each of those elements, starting from logistics, stores operation, to all that, also can provide productivity. So it's possible. What I want to also say is that it's possible in Sri Lanka to do that. And as Jan said, few things that we have to continuously work on is throwing in technology at the right time. To some extent, we have also been somewhat spoiled the fact that we have a low cost of labor. And hence, you end up not investing in technology, because when you look at the payback against that, it doesn't make sense sometimes. But are we paying the right price for our labor? In that context, should technology come in? And those are further improvements that we'll have to do. For example, we have gone into self-scanning operation of tills. Still, if you look at it, still it is cheaper to run with a cashier behind than this, but this is with the intention for a future in mind. So in our business, every year we challenge ourselves on each of these processes to look at what next in terms of technology. Not only technology, but process improvement. And also, what has also worked for us is that many have gone through this journey in the developed world. And there's no shame in copying what they're doing. And that's exactly what we have done. We know the Tesco's, the Waitroses, the Walmarts of the world have done this. And we have brought in them, the consultants at different stages in our business, brought them and told them, look here, we want to see where we could do better. And that is what also I would recommend anyone also to how to incorporate that ways of working in our respective businesses. So 18 seconds to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe, for sharing your very interesting presentation with us. We will now be moving on to our next Q&A. I would like to invite my colleague Yasmin to stage.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe. That was a very interesting presentation, I think, for all of us. So I'm just going to open the floor to the audience first. Does anybody have any questions from Mr. Subasinghe? We have a show of hands. Let's first maybe move to the back. We have a hand raised at the back. Can we have a mic?
Hello. I was wondering if it has been difficult to deal with the consumer and supplier's aversion to change when it comes to streamlining these processes, and how that's affected expected and real adoption rates.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think how it would have worked is that, if you take any person, change is difficult, and they will also not want to adapt. But it's a case of us showing them the benefit. For example, if you take a supplier and say, look here, I need you to deliver according to our requirement. I'll give you a forecast. I mean, end of the day, for a supplier, what does he want? He wants to grow his volume. And he wants to grow his volume, and he wants to make money. So how do you manage his expectations and your objectives? It's always a case of that nature. So it's not easy, but there is that, and also in that context, you also need to pick up the people who are willing to, the early adapters initially. So let's say even the centralization, now we have got it to 100% of direct dry goods centralization. But we had enough battles before we got to there. They had differences. For example, centralization, they'll say, look here, why do I need to come to one central location? My lorry anyway goes by your store. It covers another 30, 40 outlets of different forms of shape, so I don't need to come to a central location. But then the question is, showing them how often your product runs out on our shelf. The cost of your invoices going to 135 outlets, waiting for the payments to make against one single invoice where you know there's no reconciliation needed to whatever. I'm just giving you a few examples, while those are not the only examples, but how do you manage his expectations and your objectives? That is how we have managed the change management process.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe. We'll move to this side of the room. I think we had a question over here. Yes.
That will be a tough question. No.
Hi, Charitha. Very nice case study. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So in your presentation, you showed that you guys are using software like Whooper and some other machine learning. Is this software that you have developed in-house, or is this software you bought as a service? And then another follow-up question on that is, if it is something you're buying as a service, is it coming from the local tech industry, or is it coming from the international industry? And do you think like the local tech industry is paying attention to this retail sector and the kind of technological, softwares and things that are needed?
We have a mixed bag of software products in our portfolio. Like our back end will be SAP, but at the front end, your interaction with the customers are mostly developed either in-house or with organizations in Sri Lanka. Like our website, the app has been developed by local parties. While at the same time, it takes, now also we also look at what are the ready-made products available as well. Because sometimes, now we went and built a supplier interactive vendor management portal. Now it took a humongous time for us to develop, not because of lack of talent, but for somebody to understand what is needed. So you need to have the business analyst who will sit down with the software developer, explaining step by step to get to that. So it takes quite a long time. But finally, we ended up with a product. But at the same time, now Whooper, for example, they have a platform which can be easily replicated. So it's a question of, so we have a mixed bag of different products. And in that context, we also looked at if there's something very compatible at the right price, we have bought and used it. While at the same time, if there is nothing compatible, but we need to develop it, there have been enough talent in Sri Lanka who can develop it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe. Actually, I would like to take one from our online audience. I mean, since you covered in your presentation as well the amount of effort that Keells has taken to also centralize the whole, warehouse system, and how you all have that whole process of getting in the suppliers to come in. So one of our audience members online have asked us, how does the imposition of government price controls on commodities impact the modern trade sector, and what strategies do you all employ to kind of maintain process excellence under such regulatory conditions? Like, does it have an impact?
Yeah, honestly, I do believe price control should not be, it's archaic. It has to be a simple supply and demand scenario. Otherwise, you don't have the right incentives for anyone to produce. But that is for something else. But I think in terms of the modern trade, possibly we are the only, when you say modern trade, I'm talking about us, Keells, Satosa, we are possibly the only who adhere to price control, while the greater locations do not. And I don't blame them, simply because even us, if rice is told to be sold at 230 rupees, we might make a 1 rupee, 50 cents sometimes, but we have that the volume to manage a loss. Okay. While a small-time shop owner, he can't afford to lose a single penny. because he doesn't have that type of a margin to cover that. So, but in terms of adherence to control prices, I would say the modern trade is possibly the only places that you will find adherence to price control.
And you all can manage basically the fluctuations.
Yes, simply because then our volumes are so big that.
Got it. Maybe we can have a few more questions from the audience. Can we have one from the center, please? We have a gentleman in the third row. Can we have the mic?
Yeah, this is with regard to the small and micro suppliers. One thing is the quality assurance, consistency of supply, and also they say that the margins that they get or you give, and also the number of days credit. Is there any way that where we could have the ecosystem, a win-win situation for especially the micro and small holders? Because 90 days credit, 35% margin, there are some concerns.
No, don't worry. This is almost every day a question that has come up. The supermarkets are squeezing the margins, not paying on time to whatever. I can assure one thing, John Keells doesn't. I can assure you that. But I think it's a case of this. I would still think that finally there is a certain investment that comes in as well as then also that the market that has been given. Also, let's say, and also you find that the supermarkets finally end up paying the taxes to all that. So when you do all that, like the 35% margins also get diluted. And today, if you look at it, we are paying the highest electricity tariff rate. The general purpose tariff rate is the highest in the country. Originally, when the electricity cost went up, initially, after our economic meltdown, the impact for a year was 1.5 billion rupees electricity cost. So that's significant. So there are certain aspects that as a business we need to manage as well in that context. But of course, if you do ask, let's say 10 small-time vendors, suppliers, at least 5 would say that it has worked for them, where they have also got a market which they could not have before. And they have grown as well. So although it's generally said that way, there are the people who have gained as well in that context. So, and also what we have also done is that one of the biggest challenges for especially a small-time supplier is the brand. Where let's say if you take biscuits, for example, the Malibans, the Munchies, to all that, and you put an unknown brand, the person to pick that up takes a while until. So what we have also offered them is the ability to to manufacture under a private label. So that gives you the volume as well as, because then as a Keells product, you'll tend to be able to fight against the bigger brands, and also give a certain volume as well. So there are different tools that have been adapted as well in that context.
Thank you. Do we have any? We have a lady in the second row over here. Can we have a mic?
Small question. Did you observe any sort of like a reduction or sort of reduction after the crisis in your retail trade?
Yes.
So I would like to know it. And how it is now. Is it different from 2022 time period, and now how is it?
Yes, good question. So in supermarkets, we monitor the behavior of the customer under 4 areas. The unique customers, the number of shoppers who are unique shopping. the frequency of that person, how frequently come, twice a month or whatever, then that is the customer. Then in terms of their basket spend, there are two elements. The number of items in a basket, let's say you go and buy, and the price of the. So what happened was that, and this is absolutely accurate. And if you have to monitor the inflation based on that, it's absolutely accurate because the number of items in a basket in terms of the assortment of items are about 5,000 to 6,000 items. And it includes the vegetables, the fruits, everything. While if you take the inflation index that we used in the country, it is a much more narrower basket of items, but here is the total thing. So if I have to give you some statistics, 2022 January, there were a customer bought 9 items per shopping occasion, 9 items. And it dropped to under 7 when the economic crash came in. So it's about 30% volume drop. While we also saw the inflation peaking to about 60%, and then it sort of stood there. And that is at the extreme conditions. But now, if you look at it, the inflation, actually there's a deflation. We saw from about March to November, there is about a 7% deflation of the same amount. And that amount that reduced from that 9 to under 7, it came to about 6.8 items per basket, now has picked up to about 7. Slight increase in the volume that has happened. But it is still way below the pre-situation.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe, and that brings us to the close of our Q&A session. Thank you so much for your insights. As usual, if you all have any extra questions, you all can always clarify it with Mr. Subasinghe because there's a break right after this. All right, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you again, Mr. Subasinghe, for that detailed analysis of the retail sector's transformation through process excellence. Now we will take a short, well-deserved coffee break, and we will reconvene at 3:30. Thank you.